Hello there, my name is Tuan. Today I'm going to be presenting to you star trackers and celestial navigation along with my colleagues Hector Delgado, Jered Bell, Warren Bell, and Adam Martin. We'll be going over celestial navigation, star trackers, inertial space, multiple processing algorithm, and we'll wrap it up with a summary. Let's start off with celestial navigation. This is one of the oldest practices for human to find our location in a space. Let's take a look at figure 1. The idea is to utilize the angular measurement between a celestial body, such as a star, the moon, the sun, and the visible horizon, or between two different celestial bodies in order to help the navigator find their location on Earth in terms of latitude and longitude. One of the most renowned and accurate celestial navigation instrument is the sextant, invented in 1759 by John Bird. Is basically is a glorified protractor, typically used by sailors to find their way across the open sea. The animated GIF on the right show a sextant in action during the day. You can find your latitude by measuring the angle between the sun and the visible horizon. At night, you can measure the lunar distance between the moon and another celestial body, and cross-reference that distance with a set of tabulated data in order to determine your Greenwich time. That can be used along with local time to calculate longitude. With so much hassles, you can see why we gladly replace the sextant with our current GPS system. Up next, Adam will be explaining star trackers and how they're being used. Take it away.
Thanks, Tuan. So now I'm going to start talking about star trackers and how they're used and what type of applications we see them in. So star trackers on board spacecraft use celestial navigation algorithms to help determine the position of stars relative to the spacecraft with either cameras or solar cells. This helps the spacecraft better understand its position and its attitude relative to other stars, which lets it both make adjustments and allows for better tracking. Star trackers can come in many sizes. Some can fit inside CubeSats, while others, if more accuracy is needed, can be as large as a small satellite. As you can see from the images on the right, star trackers can be any size depending on the application. The image on top is a star tracker built by Adcole Maryland Aerospace that has a form factor sufficient for a CubeSat. The image on the bottom is a high accuracy star tracker built by Ball Aerospace, which is likely built for larger satellites and deep space applications. In general, a larger star tracker means more accuracy, which means it's more expensive and will cost you more money. Aside from space, star trackers can be used in terrestrial and airborne and also aquatic applications. One issue with this, though, is that on Earth, if it is daytime, it becomes much more difficult for the tracker to see the stars, but there are star trackers that can track during the day. Those star trackers may be more expensive, but they can have very important utility if you can't get GPS signal out in the ocean or in the wilderness. Star trackers are also used in astrophotography, where the trackers rotate at the same speed of the Earth but in the opposite direction to follow the apparent motion of the stars. They get really high resolution images such as these two. As you can see, if you were standing out there in the daytime, you wouldn't be able to see as many stars. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jered to talk about inertial space.
Thank you, Adam. I'm going to talk about inertial space for a moment. So inertial space is talking about where in space is our kind of 0 point, where things are moving from. And so we use the stars because we can treat them as if they lie on the common surface of a sphere. And we can do it this way because the distance to them doesn't really matter. They're all, if you think about it, they're all spaced different distances away from us. Some are closer, some are further away. But because they're so far away, and we're talking about such huge distances, and that stars exist on this kind of galactic, cosmic timescale in terms of movement, in terms of their lifespan, that for our calculations, for all intents and purposes, we can treat them as if they're all on the common surface of a sphere an infinite distance away, because then now we're not talking about distances, we're talking about the angular distance between things. And so we can simplify our calculations a lot and use that to calculate our inertial position. And now I'm going to hand over to Hector to talk about image processing algorithms.
Hi everyone, my name is Hector, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the algorithms that we use for spacecraft and star tracking. and the algorithms are considered image processing algorithms. I wanted to note that all three algorithms that I'm going to talk about fall underneath the category of lost in space algorithms, which means that the algorithms have no known orientation or initial conditions for what the spacecraft is in, which means that the algorithm will actually have to look through the entire reference catalog that we have for the stars positions that we have known. And so for starters, I want to talk a little bit about Lieb's method or Lieb's algorithms, the first algorithm we're going to talk about. All three algorithms depend on using an image set. And what the algorithm will do is it'll look for a star in the field of view that is closest to the center, and it'll designate it as S sub C. And then it'll look for the two closest stars to that centralized star and denote them as S sub 1 and S sub 2, as you can see here in this two-dimensional picture. And Lieb's method specifically looks at the angular distance in between the two stars for the center in the first and the center in the second. And then using those two angles, you'll calculate a third angle. It's called beta. And it will use these three angles to look through a catalog, a reference catalog, to find a match. Second algorithm is the area and polar moment algorithm. And what it will do is it'll use the same three stars that we talked about previously. But now, instead of looking at the angular distances in between the stars, it actually looks at the side lengths in between these triangles. And then using those side lengths as given by the vector formulas, it'll calculate the area. So that's one parameter. It's the area of the triangle. The second one is the parameter of the polar moment, because some triangles might have different areas or might have same areas. They will definitely not have the same polar moments. And that's why the polar moment will be then calculated using the area and also the side lengths as two different parameters that can be looked up in a catalog for matching. The third algorithm I want to talk about was planar angles, very similar to the previous two, except now the parameters that are being looked for in the reference table are the internal angles designated as alpha, beta, and gamma, as seen here in the three-dimensional triangle. And it's important to note that the angles actually rely on the side lengths, so it actually might take a little longer than the algorithm number 2. I want to talk briefly about how the algorithms work. Essentially, what happens is you have an image set, and we'll jump through the algorithm looking for the centralized star and then the two closest stars to build a triangle. And using these triangles, it'll actually use the three different algorithms or whichever algorithm you would prefer to find a number of matches. And so once it reaches a certain number of matches, it'll actually start building a confidence table. If you have only one match and all the other triangles were not matches, it means that the algorithm knows with almost 100% certainty that the S sub C, the centralized star, is the one they found on the catalog. If not, you have to set a tolerance or a number of iterations you want to go through. And if you reach that minimum number, then it'll return the designated S sub C that they know through the catalog with a certain error or a certain confidence. And if you don't reach that minimum, then it'll actually go and restart the loop. And this is how the iterative loop works. And this is a brief summary of how algorithms work for star tracking.
Hi, my name is Warren Bell, and I will be giving you guys a brief summary. So first, we started with celestial navigation and how it's an age-old method for finding one's place on Earth, and that it all started with the sextant. Then we moved to modern star trackers and how they come into many different shapes and sizes and what they're implemented on. Then we moved to celestial navigation algorithms and how they are used to pinpoint a craft's location, be it on the land, sky, sea, or in space. In addition, we also talked about where inertial space exists, and we came to the conclusion that the stars are set at infinity because they move super duper slow. And then these are all sort of used as an underlying concept for the specific algorithms that we talked about, which were Lieb's, area and moment, and planar angles, and how all of those algorithms are matched into a catalog to provide better measurements for our craft. These are our references, and thank you for listening.